So the first thing we probably want to do is look up our dates. November 28th is what day? 3/32. And of course, January 3rd is 3. So let's go through our process. Remember, our first step then is to find the maturity value of the original note. So our interest is first, it's going to be what?
Its value is 7,800.
7,800 times
Current rate is 0.0812.
0.082.
And then it's November to January, so we subtract 365 from 332.
But you gotta be careful. The original note's going to be the full 120 days.
Okay.
And we'll figure that as ordinary, so 120 over 360. Gives us, something didn't come out right there. I skipped too many zeros. Oh, the 8 didn't go in. $213.20. Look right. So that is my interest. So that means the maturity value is 7,800 plus the 213.20. So that's going to be $8,013.20. So that's the maturity value. That will be the face value of the discount note, the discount loan that Stacy takes with the bank. Step 2 is what? Figure out how many days are left, or the discount period. So now is where we use the days. And even though we used ordinary interest here, we still use 365 to find our days. So it's going to be 365. Come on. Well, not yet. So it'll be 365. Yeah, I know where you're going. You're right. 365 minus the 332, which gives us 33. So that's the number of days from November 28th through the end of the year. Then we have 3 days into the next year. That's 36 days. So 36 days have gone by. But remember, our discount period is the days left. So 120 days is the length of the note minus the 36 days gone by. So this is where you do get the 84 days left. That is the discount period because that's how long the bank is going to hold on to this note. Now in step 3 is to find the bank's discount. How do we find that? So yes, the maturity value of the $8,013.20 times, there you go, the discount rate of 11.7, so 0.117, times 84 over, and we do still use 360. Even though we use 365 to count the days, we still use 360 for finding the interest. Which gives us $218.76. So then the final step is to find Stacy's proceeds here, the proceeds. which is going to be the maturity value of the original loan, or the face value of the discount note, the $8,013.20, minus that discount. So $7,794.44. Does that look right? Okay.
So what is, that's her proceeds then? Or
That's what Stacy gets. That's Stacy's proceeds.
or you just the negative amount she wrote down for that?
Nope. I mean, yeah, Stacy did lose $5.66 by discounting, or $5.56 by discounting the note. The proceeds is the money that they actually get from the bank. Now again, notice that in this case, they lost money by discounting because the original loan was $7,800. Two reasons for that, if you recall. One is the rate on the original loan was 8.2% and the discount rate was 11.7%. So there's exactly 3.5% difference there. That's a pretty big difference in rates. And the second is, out of 120 days, Stacy only held it for 36 and the bank's holding it for 84. So that usually makes the discount higher and the chances of losing money are greater. How do we feel about those? You guys feeling pretty confident? Anybody really shaky on them? Anybody terrified of them? Yeah, a little bit. Do you want to try one more? Let's do one more. Why not? We got 5 weeks left.
Wow.
Phil loans Tim $12,400 for 90. I tried to use pretty generic names. For a while, I only used unisex names like Pat, Stacy, Peyton, Chris, and stuff like that because I was told that I used too many male names in my. So that was kind of my thing. But,
That's ridiculous.
everybody's got to have something that they notice.
Hey, Phil could be Phyllis.
There you go. So Phil loans Tim $12,400 for 90 days at 7.1% on May 8th.
Why? Why is he lying to this money? Is that the mortgage?
Usually what it is like we went through that invoicing. So they have sold merchandise to this person, and at the end of that credit period, they can't pay, so they convert it into a note. So they start charging interest on it. Let's say on July 11th, Phil discounts. No, they don't have to discount the note. They just show up with a baseball bat. Phil discounts the note to a bank at 9.3%. Find Phil's proceeds. Let's see how this is going for you. Again, before I get started, and we're going to look up the days. July 11th, or actually May 8th is what? 128. And July 11th? What is it? 192?
192.
192, okay. Okay, so now that we have the dates, what's our first step to figuring this thing out?
12,400. Multiply by 0.071. And then going to multiply by 90 and divide by 220.
Okay.
Oh, yes,
Oops. So yes, we're finding the maturity value of the original note. So that interest, we start at the 12,400 principal. Our percent of 7.1 is 0.071. It'll be 90 over 360. So we get $220.10 in interest. Yes? Okay. So that's the interest. So the maturity value, 12,400 plus the 220.10 will be $12,620.10. What is our next step? Our discount period, right?
Discount period. Is the discount period equivalent to a partial payment?
It's similar to it, but remember the partial payment goes off the days that have gone by. The discount period is the days that are left.
Okay.
So we've got 192 minus 128, which is 64. So there's 64 days gone by. It does kind of, doesn't it? So we have a 90-day note minus the 64 days gone by gives us 26 days left. That is our discount period. And then
Take our face value on the discount.
okay, we have to find our bank discount. So it will be what? What do we put in here?
Maturity, no, it'd be $12,620.
$12,620.10 times 0.093 because the discount rate was 9.3% times 26 days. That's the single biggest mistake people make on these is it's the days left that we use for our discount period. A lot of people want to use that days gone by, but you have to subtract from the term of the loan and get the days left. That's what has to go in there. On the test, that's the biggest mistake I'll catch people making as well. So if you did it, don't feel bad. You're in a large group. So 12,620.1 times 0.093 times 26 divided by 360. $84.77 is the bank's discount. And then find the proceeds. So yes, the 12,620.1 minus 84.77 gives us $12,535.33 as the proceeds. So in this case, Phil makes a slight profit because here, two things working in Phil's favor. The original rate of 7.1 and the discount rate of 9.3 are not that far apart. And out of 90 days, Phil held it for 64, so the bank only had to hold it for 26. So that works in Phil's favor. Any questions? How many want to run out and do like a dozen more of those? Okay. Well, time to start our new topic for tonight. So far, what we've been talking about is simple interest. And remember, with simple interest, we said interest is only calculated in one of two cases. One, if there's an action on the loan, or an action on the note, I should say, not necessarily a loan. That could be a payment or a withdrawal, either one, money paid in or money drawn out. Second, interest has to be calculated at maturity. And most of what we did was we were finding the interest at maturity, but we did do those partial payments. We had to find the interest and every time a payment was made and then deal with the payments to find balances. So an example of that was, let's say let's go the other way. Borrowing, we're getting too depressed with the borrowing. Let's say you invest money. So you invest $5,000 at 8% for 3 years. How much would you have left at the end of the 3 years? Well, we would find the interest first. 5,000 times 0.08 times 3. Interest is principal times rate times time. And what's that come out to be? So like $1,200. So that's our interest, $1,200. So then the maturity value is the 5,000 plus the 1,200. So 6,200 is maturity value. Now, as we noted about 2 weeks ago, most banks will not do simple interest. This is 8% simple interest for 3 years. In fact, most banks won't do simple interest for anything longer than 6 months. And we talked about car loans and home mortgages being simple interest, but that's only because they expect you to make a payment every month, so the interest is going to get added in. They don't want it sitting there for long periods of time without interest being figured out. So what they do is something called compound interest. And I guarantee you anything more than 6 months is going to be compound interest. For most banks, anything more than 3 months will be compound interest. But what compound interest does is it has periods for compounding. And at the end of each period, interest is calculated whether there was an action on the loan or not, and it is added to the balance. So let's take a look at this same example that we just did up here. But I'm going to word it a little bit differently now. You're going to invest $5,000 at 8%. Compounded quarterly for 3 years. So, of course, the difference is this phrase right here, compounded quarterly. What does compounded quarterly mean?
4 years. It's
4 months.
Yeah.
4 months.
4 times a year, every 3 months, 1/4 of a year, the interest is figured in and added into the account. So for this example, we have to figure it out by the quarter. So quarter 1, oops, I'll take the 1 off here. Just quarter 1. Finding our interest and our balance. So for the first quarter, our interest is 5,000 times 0.08 times 1/4 of a year. Which is $100. So we add that to the 5,000, we get a balance of 5,100. So what that means is we start quarter 2 with a balance of $5,100. And we're going to use that to calculate the interest. So we find that interest, and it's going to be $102, giving us a balance of $5,202. So that means we will start quarter 3 with a balance of $5,202 times 0.08 times 1/4, which is going to give us an interest of $104.04. Correct?
Yep.
So that means our balance is now $5,306.04. Now I'm going to pause for air here. Compounded quarterly for 3 years. How many quarters is it going to take to get through 3 years? 12. 4 times a year for 3 years. 4 times 3 makes 12. I don't want to do this 12 times. So it's time to look for a shortcut. If we look at what happened here, we had a beginning balance, right? Each year, or each period, we multiplied by 0.08 times 1/4. Well, 0.08 times 1/4 is 0.02. That's our 2%. And we got the interest. Then we had to add that interest on to get our final amount. Well, the $5,000 was the full amount, the 100%. The 0.02 was the 2% interest. That was actually found as our 8% divided by 4 periods a year. The ending balance we found by taking our interest and adding it back to the $5,000. Well, that would be the 100% plus this amount, right? Remember when we were doing our percent increase problems back at the beginning, about week 3, where you had, a starting amount? One of the most resounding examples would be markup. The cost plus markup equals selling price. And if it was a percent markup on cost, you had 100% as the cost. You had a 20% markup. That means the selling price was 120%. Yeah? Vaguely? What's that? It's been a while. Oh no, we'll keep going on either way. So, unfortunately. So anyway, that ending balance is 100% plus this value here, the 8% divided by the 4, is what's called a rate per period. That is the 8% is the annual rate, that's the stated rate, divided by the number of periods in the year. So what could have happened here is we could have started with our $5,000 and multiplied by, this is 2% here, so 100 plus 2% would be 102%. So as a rate, 102% is 1.02. That would give us our balance at the end of the first quarter, 55100, right? Take the 5100 times 1.02. Gives us the 5202. Well, how many times would I have to multiply by 1.02? Careful. 12 times, right? 3 times a year, 4 times a year for 3 years. In math, we have a shortcut for multiplying by the same number over and over again. An exponent, a power. So that's, I don't know why I put 51 there. This should just be 5,000. So I could have just, instead of doing it period by period, I could start with the 5,000, multiply by 1.02 to the power of 12. Gives me 6341.21. So $6,341.21. Compared to when we did simple interest, what did we have? 6,200. So you can see that gives an extra, by compounding, there's an extra $141.21 in interest. You know, each time you do one of these compound interest problems, you don't want to have to go through that process of figuring out the rate per period and all that. So let's take a look at a standardized formula for this. First of all, we're going to look at a timeline again. We're going to start our timeline now, and we're going to go to some point off in the future. Now is the present, so that's considered the present value, the value right now. Off in the future is the future, so that's considered the future value. So what we are looking at right now is we're looking at starting in the future and starting in the present, I should say, and ending in the future. And this is the known amount. We know how much money we're going to start with. We want to figure out how much we're going to end up with. So we know the present value. We want to know what our future value is going to be. What happens in the middle here is the compound interest. So our formula, the future value is equal to the present value times, parentheses, 1 plus our rate per period divided by, actually I said 1 plus our rate divided by the number of periods in a year to the power of the number of periods in the year times the number of years. So R is our rate. N Number of periods in a year. T is the number of years. And the 1 comes from that 100%. You know, we took that 2%, it was 100 plus 2% to get 102% at the end of each period. So that's where the 1 comes from. So let's do an example here. Let's say you invest $5,000 at 6% compounded monthly for 8 years. Find the future value. In other words, find the amount of money you're going to have at the end of the 8 years. Things we need to identify. How many periods are going to be in a year? Perfect. Compounded monthly indicates 12 periods in a year. So we're finding that future value. What's our present value? $5,000 times, we open parentheses, 1 plus, what's our rate? 6%, so 0.06, divided by, periods in a year is 12, to the power of 12 times 8, n times t. Now, most of the time, what I'll do is I'll just look at this and say 12 times 8 is 96. Just because it's way easier to enter in the calculator like that. Before I calculate this, anybody have any questions as to where the numbers in this formula came from? So let's punch her in. That is not real good. Let's try that again. 1 plus 0.06. There we go. $8,070.71. How many of you got that result when you punched it in? Couple of you? I'm going to give you a time. Try to punch that in again. So it's going to be, you're going to type in the 5,000 times, open parentheses, 1 plus 0.06 divided by 12, close parentheses. And most of your calculators use the caret key to enter the power. So caret 96 equals . Anybody need me to come help them on their calculator? Or you guys got it? It's working? Okay. Let's have you guys try one then. Tim invests $9,000 at 8.3% interest, compounded quarterly for 7 years. How much does Tim have at the end. I'll give you guys a couple minutes to figure that one out. Take a peek. So we are looking for a future value. What's our present value? 9,000 times, what's next? 1 plus 0.083 divided by numbers, just the number of periods in a year, so just 4, to the power of 28. Where did the 28 come from? Yeah, 4 periods per year times 7 years. $15,995.04. Any questions there?
If it's provided quarterly, it's not 3 months, 4 times, it's 4 times.
It's 4 times a year, which would be every 3 months.
Oh, okay, you didn't say,
Okay, that makes sense.
you don't put the 28, you don't put the 7.
Yeah, the 28 goes up here. That's the 4 times 7 makes that. Yep. Okay, now this next example I'm showing you just because I feel obligated to. I think this is something everybody should see by the time they're out of high school. But there are a number of you in here that will be finishing your program by the time you're mid-20s, 24, 25. So I want to show you this example. Let's say that you finish school and you are 25 years old. You get a new job, making more money than you were before. A lot of people, they increase their lifestyle. They get move to a nicer apartment or buy a house or get a new car. But if you stayed living the way you were for a year and just saved that extra money you were earning, it wouldn't be hard to put away a few $1,000s. I'm going to use $5,000 as the example. And actually the limit's gone up to $5,500 now, but a year ago, $5,000 was what the U.S. government lets you put in an IRA every year, retirement account every year. Now it's gone up. Full retirement is it, and actually for most of you, it'll be more than 67 years of age. For me, it'll be more than 67. I don't remember the year. I think it's 1967 or 68. Every year you're born after that, your date gets pushed back a month or something like that to draw full Social Security. But that is still 42 years. If you invest that with a good investment planner for 42 years, average annual gains, now any 40-year period in the stock market, the average annual gain is between 12 and 13%. That's in periods that include the big crash in 2008, even the big crash in 1929 for the Great Depression. They've still averaged 12 to 13% per year over a 40-year period. So let's just figure 10% is what you're going to earn. And most of those compound quarterly. So what that means is your future value is going to be your present value of 5,000 times 1 plus 0.10 for 10% divided by 4 for quarterly to the power of, now remember this is going to be 4 for quarterly times 42 years, which is 168. Now before anybody punches this in and sees the result, anybody want to guess as to how much this is going to be? $316,649.93. Now that's just putting away one lump sum of $5,000 at the age of 25. Age is your best friend when you're investing. Youth is your best friend. Time is what really makes the money go. Now, just to be fair, let's say you wait till you're a little older. Let's say you're 42 years old, which means you only have 25 years to go. So this now is your future value. We're going to assume you can still average that 10%. But it's now 25 times 4, which is 100 periods. Again, before anybody punches this in, anybody want to guess? $126? That's not a bad guess. $59,068.58.
Wow. Wow. Yeah.
This is if you start at 42 instead of at 25. So yeah, you start at 42, but when you hit 67, you'll have $60,000 compared to $300,000. Less than 1/5. So the power of youth is really powerful. Now I realize there's some people in the room that are about my age that are glaring at me right now. Trust me, I am just as depressed over this example as most of you. When I develop my time machine, I'll go back and buy stocks in McDonnell Douglas and IBM. Pretty much, yeah.
Some crazy butterfly effect.
Ah,
You never know. I could
true.
never be born. You will never have me as a student.
I'm going to keep my mouth shut because there's nothing I can respond to that that'll... I feel like the risk reward to commenting on that is not very good.
Isn't the rub though if you take money out of the Roth IRA that you're taxed with incredibly high rate?
That depends on what you're talking about. If it's an IRA or a Roth IRA, and I don't want to get too far into the products, but since we only got a minute till break, let's do just a quick. A Roth IRA and a regular IRA. When you put money into the regular IRA, you get a tax break. So you get a tax deduction for putting money into a regular IRA. When you put money into a Roth IRA, that's money you've already paid the tax on. So there's no tax break. So if I put $5,000 into a regular IRA, on my tax form, I actually subtract $5,000 from my income before I figure out my tax. On the Roth IRA, I don't. I just pay the tax on all the money and I put it in there. When you draw it out, the regular IRA, you pay tax on what you draw out. The Roth IRA, when you draw it out, there is no tax. You paid the tax at the beginning. So even on all the interest you earn, there's no tax.
Wow.
Now, if you pull it out early, if you draw early, the regular IRA, you pay your tax rate, and it used to be plus 10%. So there's an extra 10% penalty above your tax rate. That may have changed in the last couple of years. Roth IRA, there is no penalty, no tax on principal. So what that means is you put in $5,000, it draws interest 10 years from now, the balance is like $12,000. You can still take out that original $5,000 you put in with no penalties. You just can't take out the interest. Okay, it is now time for our break, so let's go ahead and take our break. We'll come back about 6:20.